This is Jilliana Ranicar-Breese, and this is part one of my interview with Ginelle Nicolas, who's originally from New York, currently living in Palma. Ginelle, tell me how did you get to Palma, and why?
Well, to be 100% honest, I was looking for not America at that time.
When was that? How long ago?
About 2013, I was working in a bank, doing quite well, but feeling a little unsatisfied.
In New York?
In New York, because previously I had been working in musical theater, and then the financial crisis hit, and my brilliant idea was, well, if the bankers caused the financial crisis, they should be the ones to give me money. So I somehow found my way working at a bank, but if that's not what you're meant to do, you start going back to your roots, and so I needed to get back to music, and so
I have to say at this stage that you are a singer, but you say you're not a jazz singer. What kind of singer would you describe yourself as?
I think I sing soul music, and I go back and forth between theater and before I never was in a band. I was always doing musical theater because there's a story to tell. For me, that's usually the most attractive thing about any song, or what the story is. So I felt really comfortable in musical theater. And
what do you mean by musical theater?
All of the musicals like Ragtime and the things that are on Broadway.
Oh, right,
and
okay.
I had Broadway aspirations, but I had never booked a Broadway show. So I would do regional things, and I took a break because of the crisis, and at the time, about 2013, I decided to go back. And the passion was a little bit dry, because being in New York at that time, the environment had changed. And I started asking myself, what was I even doing this for? Because it's sort of a waiting game in New York, and I needed to make sure that whatever I was doing it because I loved it, or I felt like that was where I had to be. And I didn't just remember I had a really great audition, and I felt awful because I did not want to be there. So I started looking for not America.
Okay.
And so at that point, I asked everyone who'd ever left, how did they do it? I had friends who taught English in France, and I asked everyone ever, how did they do it? And I ended up in the English language program in Spain. And so
how do you mean you ended up? What do you mean? You chose Spain.
In fact, I didn't. I chose the first program. So it was about April of that year, like between February and April.
Of 2013.
2014.
Okay.
I decided, you know what, let's try to get out of town. And by the time I'd made that decision, pretty much every other program had passed its deadline.
When you're talking about a program, was this at a university or a college or?
A lot of
or something
European
online?
Governments, not everyone, but a lot of European governments have programs to bring native speakers to their country.
Oh,
to
okay.
So France has a program.
And Spain, obviously. The Spanish are very enthusiastic to learn English.
Right. And I think that has to do with maybe, if I think about it, I think Franco left in about the 70s. And it was, and so Spain was pretty much closed off, and maybe the rest of Europe had exposure to more visitors and English speakers, because to me, it does seem like the rest of Europe is farther ahead in learning English than Spain. So maybe they're playing a little bit of catch up, now that it seems that their borders are more open to, new populations. Maybe that's why they feel the impetus.
So you came to Madrid, yes?
No, I applied to Madrid, and because I was so late in the process, I think they were expanding the program in Mallorca that year. It was something very political, And so, so in that moment, in that year, if you were late, your punishment was that you were sent to Mallorca. And I remember...
It's like Alcatraz or something. Oh, your punishment.
You know, and I remember, you know, getting the notice and thinking to myself...
Oh, that's very funny.
You know, well, if this is the punishment for being late, okay, you know. Because I Google Earthed it and I thought, okay, that's what I get.
So that's how come you came here. But you have lived in Madrid, you said.
So yes, so after the first year, I thought, great, it's an island, it looks beautiful, and I've always wanted to finish learning Spanish because I actually believe if I had come to Spain when I was 18, that I would be fluent because my Spanish was better then than it is now. And so I thought I would learn Spanish or improve it at the very least, and that was not the
Except
case.
Mallorca is Catalan.
Right, so I started saying like, "Ma'am, si no te entiendo," and I thought to myself, this is not Spanish. So I chose to go to Madrid the following year.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. I really loved the people there. It's a really Spanish city for a capital and an international place. It still maintains its Spanishness, but I'd already fallen in love with Mallorca.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? So I would spend moments there thinking, well, this is not Mallorca.
Do you speak Catalan?
What I consider is I speak whatever I've pulled from the air, because the first year I was in a smaller town, and so people would start speaking to me in Spanish and accidentally go back to Catalan, so I would just answer them in English and they talk to me in Catalan. And so for whatever reason, the language sticks to me more than Spanish. I feel like I have to repeat something 5 or 6 times in Spanish for it to stay, but Catalan 2 or 3 times, and it seems to stay. So
Now, why do you love Mallorca?
I think that it can be a really great place to sort of settle down and to yourself. It's not necessarily... it takes a while to adapt and become a part of the community here, but if you need a quiet moment, you can find that here. If you need to be surrounded by beauty, you can find that here. For me, the land itself is enough. The beauty of the land itself it can be enough. I mean, sometimes I'm a human, I need my community, but I think that's really what charms people about Mallorca.
Okay, we'll come back to that in part 2. Thank you very much.